All right, so I'm gonna make this a little bit quicker because I have a confession to make. I'm a little under the gun for time. I have someone coming to fix my hot water heater. I have a very tiny little laundry room, and I was doing mega loads of laundry on the weekend. And I hit, that dangly thing? The dangly thing, I'll probably put it somewhere here on your hot water heater. It just kind of like some languid nipple. I don't know, some hanging decoration. And I hit it, and all of a sudden this water started coming out. I was like, not good, no bueno. So I quickly started fangling. Of course, the first thing you do in an emergency is you Google things. How do I stop hot water? Anyway, I found out that that's a safety valve. It's the water relief valve. I'm always learning things because the one thing you have to know about me is I know nothing when it comes to mechanical things or engines and I know nothing. I All I know about cars is this: has four wheels. You have to put gas in it now and then, and when you press the start button, angels come from above and around and start the car for you and push it. That's all I know. That's all I know about cars. So I hit this thing, so I'm googling it and I check it out, and so I put a bucket underneath right away, and it says if it's still leaking after that, you got to get it replaced. I'm like, oh, good. This little accident is probably going to cost me a couple $100. Anyway, I called. I have someone coming. They should be coming. I mean, This is one of those times I'm hoping they're going to be late, but knowing my luck, they're going to be here early. So because of the plumber, you're going to get possibly a shorter episode because after this, my kids get home and then it's a hot mess. Nothing's going to get done. All right. Now you got a little background into what's happening in Silvatown. Welcome to Seared. Okay, so what I got for you today is this. First of all, please, if you haven't already and you're watching, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I want to get to 100 subscribers before the end of October. This is October 2023 right now. And at 1,000 subscribers, I'm going to reiterate this at the end. 1,000 subs, you get the chef cooking reveal, which means that I will cook something for you at 1,000 subs. So let's make this happen. Let's make with the loofah, get it out there. So what I have today, what I want to share is there's three dudes that come to mind. I was thinking about this earlier today. There's three cats that I want to talk about briefly and sort of what they have in common. Because I think there's something there that we can all recognize, maybe in ourselves or maybe others. I guarantee in a workplace, you know someone like this. I guarantee. If you don't, congrats. You are in a fantastic place. So I worked in one restaurant in particular that had two of these wonderful characters. And here's the thing. When I talk about, when in these stories that I share, I'm not here to belittle or humiliate or embarrass anyone. These are just tales that are meant to just be universal in some ways, because I want it to be relatable to you. And so when I share these stories, they're not to throw anyone under the bus. They're not here. I'm not here to castigate anyone or to show them up in any way. Because definitely I know I have lots of stories about myself that are way worse, and I've done the same. Anything that happens in these stories, I've probably done and done way worse. So when I share these, just keep that caveat in mind. So the one place I worked, there was these two cats. And of course, I'm not going to use names. So let's call them Tom and Jerry, cat and a mouse. Tom and Jerry. They actually worked at the same time at one point. But Tom, he was a scruffy vet. He was one of those guys, like we'd call him a hired gun. This was a person that wasn't necessarily interested in making cooking or chefing a career. They just jumped from place to place to place, plied their services, their wares, and then moved on. Their loyalty was to the highest bid. They weren't necessarily interested in growing their culinary skills. They weren't interested in to be the next, Paul Bocuse or anyone like that. They were in it for a quick paycheck. Like these are the same cats that would go and do all these catering gigs and just wherever the wind may blow, like the littlest hobo. If any of you Canadians from a certain vintage will remember the littlest hobo, just going and drifting where they shall go. And so Tom was one of these hired guns. So you can tell he had lived a certain type of lifestyle. He was a rugged individual, and the reality is he was just not very good at what he did. He just wasn't. He burned everything essentially. He didn't realize, and this is a tip for anyone who cooks or wants to be, high heat is good for boiling water or maybe searing something. That's about it. You don't need to have everything cranked all the time. And this guy was the Crank-O-Matic 5000. Everything was cranked. And of course, that's why he burned and scorched and charred and any other adjective you want to use. We'd say that's not burnt, that's Cajun. So anyway, he burned a lot. He'd burned risotto and he'd burn, whatever it is he had to make on that station. I can't recall, but I remember risotto being the big one. And one day, so this guy worked mornings, and the guy who worked night, I guess he had tried to get into his, like, try to explain to him, and it was very frustrating for the nighttime guy to come, because he had to come and fix all his mistakes, and he had to redo everything. And he spoke to the chef, and anyway, he left a note. I remember he left this long note saying, "Hey," and I read it because I was the first one there. I was there very, very early, and I was very nosy, so I read it, and essentially, he's like, "Hey, dude, like, if you need help and this was wrong and this happened, and I'm more than happy to come in early and now this," and so buddy boy Tom walks in, and I'm watching him reading that note. I'm like, all right, let's see. And you can just see his face getting redder and redder. You can see the steam coming out of his ears like it was a Tom and Jerry cartoon, just anger. Eventually he crushes it, just crumples it up and throws it away. I'm laughing because I know what was written there. And the guy would proceed to go and burn shit. Like, it's just, it's like the scorpion and the frog, right? The scorpion stings the toad, the frog, because that's what a scorpion does what a scorpion does. The burning guy burns. It's like Burning Man, but in whites. I don't know. And so I watched, and this guy was perpetually trying to find different ways to cut down his work, where in reality, he was just making more work, not only for him, for others. Okay, so there's Tom. I can't remember how long Tom lasted, not long. The same place, Jerry worked there. Also know that I worked with Jerry at another place. We worked together here. He worked for me at another place. So I knew Jerry is Jerry. Jerry, too, is a hired gun. He talks the talk. He can be very flowery and funny, but just as a cook, he's a shoemaker in many ways. So I remember in that same place, he had to, the chef wanted the pasta. So a lot of times when you order pasta, it comes pre-portioned. They cook the pasta ahead of time to a certain point, right? Like slightly undercooked, cool it right away and pack it away. So when you have an order, you just throw that order in the water, just bring it up to temperature, then toss it in the sauce, etc. And so the chef wanted, like, I think 90 grams or whatever it was. He had to weigh it with a scale. It's tedious, but it makes it consistent. Jerry didn't want to do this. Now, someone went around, the sous chef would go around and show him and make sure. And of course, as soon as the sous chef gone, he's like, screw it. And he would just eyeball everything. And it was just a disaster. Again, making more work because you have to go and fix everything after. And also, it's not consistent. One customer is getting a massive pile, another person is getting like an appetizer portion. So, but this guy, 1,000,001 ways that he could just shortcut everything. And when he worked for me at another place, it got worse. And the worst part about Jerry is that he thought he knew it all. Okay, so you have a know-it-all hack, which is awful. The third person, I don't know what we'll call him. Call him Garfield. The cat. So Garfield was a long timer at this place. Nice guy, type of person you'd want to go grab a coffee with or a beer, whatever it is. And he would never taste the sauces. He would say the right things when the chef was there or I was. He'd say the right things, but as soon as someone left, he was back on his bullshit, which was overcooking things, cooking things too far ahead. His plates were messy, his plates were cold, the food was awful. Didn't taste anything, didn't season any, like it was just you had to get him, you had to be on top of him just to do the basics, the minimum required. And he held a notable position. And I was thinking about these three guys. I don't know how they came to mind, but the one thing, and I mentioned the word already, because you can probably guess where this is going. The one thing these guys had in common was that they were shortcut kings. Absolute shortcut kings. If they could find a way to just cut their time in half or more, even if it was something that they thought would save them 20 seconds, they would do it. If there is a way that they can eliminate things like integrity and character and proper cooking skill, they would find a way. And they can get away with it. They got away with stuff. At times when they cared, the food did turn out really lovely. But they were just so set in their ways of trying to make it easier. But not the kind of easy that is innovative or some way that is changes the game. No, they were looking for the absolute bare minimum and shortcuts. And that is really what I wanted to share today, because shortcuts, there's a quote by Bill Gates. I believe he says, that he only hires lazy people or something like that. Like, if you want to get something done quicker, give the job, or more efficient, give the job to someone who's lazy, which I understand the sentiment, but it's awful advice. Because I'm not talking about lazy. I'm just talking about shortcut. Shortcuts, might be a symptom, if you will, of someone who might be lazy. Laziness is a whole different topic, but shortcuts. And there's just something about shortcuts that, not only just in a kitchen, I mean, just in anything, in life in general, it may seem like a good idea at the time, but you're really shortcutting an opportunity for growth. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, so just hold a second. Okay, so what's wrong with shortcuts, Paul, you're asking? Kitchens are fast. You got to get stuff done. What's wrong with, cutting a corner here or there, like getting something done? There's nothing wrong with doing something that will increase efficiency, whether it's the kitchen or your business or whatever. I mean, society is about speed. Fast and now is the currency, which is why Amazon is like the king, because fast and now is what they do. Like, we used to wait weeks for something delivered. Now you get it the same day, right? And with shortcuts, there's so many reasons why we like shortcuts, because yes, it's fast, but also because our brains like to win, right? Like, we want to get into a place where, like, I'm going to get this. I'm going to get this. If I can do this, it's like these little hits of dopamine. At least for me, it has been. It's like, look at me, I did this and I cut this. And there's also like a little danger factor. It's like, how far can I push this and get away with it? And there's only so many things you can get away with in a kitchen, perhaps. And yes, shortcuts can be helpful, but I find, and it's just an opinion, is that shortcuts are more short term. And yes, they can save time and resources and effort, and they can get you to the finish line quicker and are helpful when you're under pressure. Like, what it's like when you are under pressure, you become more creative, and it can kind of force you and push you in a new way that you haven't done before. So in some ways, shortcuts are good. And there are people who have created shortcuts that now might be new standards, new ways of doing things, because they found something that I wouldn't even call that a shortcut. They found a way to save time and be more efficient and productive because they thought of a different way of doing it. To me, shortcut isn't so much that. It may have started that way, though. It might have started that way, but shortcuts to me are circumnavigating sort of a tried and true way that works for the sake of, and I think there's different reasons why people do it, right? For our Tom, Jerry, and Garfield, they did it because they just wanted to hang around and talk more. They want or go have more smoke breaks or whatever it is. That was their motivation, frankly. And so it wasn't that they were trying to better themselves or create a new standard operating way of doing things or to increase the efficiency of the kitchen. They were doing it was very selfish in some ways. And I think many of us, when we take shortcuts, that's we're thinking about ourselves. Now, the problem with shortcuts, there's several problems with it, is we tend to get like there's many factors, but we get careless, right? We place more emphasis on efficiency than on quality. And again, that pasta that's different sizes, the quality's not there, right? He might have saved maybe 2 minutes on his prep, but the long-term effects, they're greater. The cost is much greater than what he thought he saved, right? It's when you have these shortcuts, you are hampering your ability to learn. Okay, so here's an example. So I know a shortcut of creating hollandaise. Okay, hollandaise. Okay, brunch. Can we talk about brunch for a second? 99.9% of all cooks I know, including me, hello, hate cooking brunch. Just hate it. First of all, it's on a Sunday, and a lot of cooks are hungover from Saturday night. But also, it's just relentless. There's no you're pushing. Also, you're prepping a lot of time from scratch because if you're only open for brunch once a week, that means Sunday morning you're prepping like a dog trying to get ready for Sunday brunch. It's very fast. There's no brunch isn't a place that you dine. Brunch is a meal that you just get, and people want to have that. Have their little dish with a slice of cantaloupe on the side or whatever it is, and then move on with their day, going antiquing or going to the mall or whatever. It's just not fun. So I learned a way to make hollandaise, for eggs Benedict, in the blender, in a food processor. And it's so fast. It's brilliant. And I still remember it's 4 egg yolks per pound of butter, lemon juice, Tabasco, salt, pepper. And so you just put the 4 egg yolks, blam, splash them into the food processor, melt the butter. You don't even have to clarify it. You just melt it. Blitz that baby, add a bit of lemon juice, or maybe add it later. And then you just pour in the melted butter, emulsify it like you're making mayo or whatever. And it works. Now, it's a beautiful shortcut. I don't even know if I'd call it a shortcut, but in a way it is. It makes things more efficient. It's quicker. But here's the fact is that when I'm teaching cooks, when I be instructing cooks, I would never show them that. At least not until they learn how to make proper hollandaise. Which is, you got to clarify the butter. You put the egg yolks in a bowl and you whisk, and then you put it on heat and slowly emulsify and take it off the heat because you don't want to cook the eggs. It's an art. It's a process, and it breaks. And the reason I wouldn't show a new cook, the cowboy method, and it works. It's beautiful, by so good. Is that I would be taking away the learning ability on them messing up a hollandaise, because you will mess up a hollandaise. Like that's just part and parcel of making hollandaise. I would take away them understanding the emulsification process, how to repair a sauce, how to work quickly under pressure, how to season a sauce, how to adjust the acidity, and all of that. They would miss out on that because I'm just going, press this button, and also the clarifying the butter process, the patience, how to skim it, make sure the milk solids, all that stuff. And they wouldn't learn that if I just showed them the shortcut. And so it's like that the idea of know the rules before you break them. And so when we get into shortcuts, we start to, we have, disadvantages, like there's more risk, there's more errors. There's lower quality. And again, you miss the experience of going through the hard because you just want to shortcut and circumnavigate everything else. Like, the question I ask is like, is that shortcut helpful? Is it worth that extra little time or money or resources you save? Because a lot of the times the answer is no. There's the story of Norman Rockwell, the American uh, portraitist painter. He used to use photos. I didn't know this. He used to use photos. He had over 18,000 black and white photos, and he used to trace those photos onto the canvas using a machine back, and then he would paint. Now, is that cheating? And I believe at the end, when near the end of his life, he said he still felt guilty about that, as if that was cheating, because that's one word we think of shortcuts. You think of marathons, people cutting through. That's cheating. Of course, that's cheating. And he felt like that was cheating, when in reality he was just creating a new way of he was being creative and being creative. I don't think anyone would think that he was like a shortcut king. He just found another way of doing something. His paintings are fantastic, right? So he had to go through the risk of looking foolish or feeling guilty. He learned to do this, and in the end it paid off. Is that a shortcut? You could say it was a shortcut, but I feel like that's just another technique. When it comes to art, there's just techniques. When you use shortcuts, you deny yourself the hardships, the detours, the lessons along the road, right? The deep ruts and the bumps and the dark rabbit holes you go through and down, that where you're forced to develop your resilience, to sharpen your skills and be creative in your solutions, right? And especially for cooks, there's so many techniques, and some of them are easier, some of them aren't. And when you shortcut, you're taking away the ability to move through the hard, right? And we take that away from ourselves. We rob ourselves of that rich experience of moving through the tough stuff, because then when you get onto the other side, not only do you understand yourself a lot more, but you also know how to problem solve more. Shortcutting also shortcuts the problem solving in a deeper way, right? Because again, shortcuts are very surface. These days you look on TikTok, you look on social media, like everything is like a life hack, right? There's tons of videos about that. There's health hacks like pills, and I mean, these are predate social media, but health hacks, right? Pills and medications, and get this, there's financial hacks like get rich quick schemes and crowdsourcing and that kind of thing. There's educational hacks or shortcuts. Back in the day we had Cole's Notes or Cliff Notes. Now you have ChatGPT as a way, could be used as a shortcut. There's spiritual hacks. You kind of look at the very surface new agey kind of stuff, or spiritual bypassing, and it's not helpful, right? Like none of those really pan out in the end. And again, why do we do this? Well, there might be a lack of understanding of what we have to do. We think it's going to be less work. We create bad habits. And so we don't even realize we're doing that. And, like if I want to go meta here for a second, even this podcast, I talk about the things that don't go right or that were challenging. I don't talk about the things that are beautiful and glowing. I mean, there might be times I probably will, but for the most part, I talk about the things that were hard, because in those tough moments, or when I share, like today, other people struggling with certain things, it allows me time to reflect upon and change. What can I change within me? What are some things that I can share that will help others? And when you use shortcuts, you don't have that time of reflection. You don't have that space because you're too busy just trying to get to the finish line no matter what. Right? And even on a grander scale, when I think of it, it's not just I'm talking about a kitchen or a business. When you shortcut, when we do things like when we settle for mediocrity, right? Like it's kind of like in life. It's like, oh, well, that is what it is mentality. Like, don't bother going for the gold. Don't risk looking bad or foolish. Settling for mediocrity is a way of shortcutting yourself, or taking the easy road, right? Where there's no resistance, lowest common denominator, avoid the risk of putting yourself out there. That's another way of shortcutting your life. Or when you leave everything to chance, right? Where you absolve yourself of any personal responsibility, where you play victim, like, I don't know, that just happened. Life just happens to me. I don't know. That's another way of shortcutting your life, or following the crowd, like playing it so super safe, being the sheep, right? Like don't stand out, don't cause a scene, don't rock the boat. Just stay steady and you'll win. And you don't really win, right? You may just not have someone saying anything about you. That's because you're not doing anything. Who was it that said, I think it was Oscar Wilde, if you want someone to criticize you, just do something. And so people that don't do and try to hide, no one's going to criticize them, but they live a life of just, I think of quiet desperation. I don't know. It's not much of a life. Or another one we do is when we ghost or put things off. We put our head in the sand and we hope things go away and not tackle the things head on. We don't summon up the courage to tackle the things we need to do. And that's another way of shortcutting life. Writer Thomas Opong, I think it was, he talks about taking the long cuts. I love that. And he talks about, again, like, and you hear people sharing this over and over, is it's being consistent in your routines and your behaviors and your habits and your principles and your rules, all these things to help you become a better version of yourself. And these are the habits of successful people. When you look at someone who has their routines at night, in the morning, people who go to the gym or exercise regularly, people who are constantly watching their health and what they put into their body or what they read, who they talk to, who they hang out with. These aren't short little stabs in the dark. These are consistent, intentional habits that they create, because they know at the end, it's like the slow and steady wins the race. At the end, and as they go through, they're going to grow. And that's something that shortcuts just will not give you. It's the long cuts, right? And so what's the benefit? And the thing is, people don't like that. People don't like the idea of having to wait and be patient and take the long game on this. It doesn't, especially again, in this Amazon world where speed is the currency, it's hard for people to wait and to be patient and to take the time. But when you do that, the rewards are so great, as opposed to being these shortcut kings and queens, and where, yes, you might have a temporary win, but there's so many long-standing issues that come from that, consequences. I think of, again, someone that does a shortcut, think they're going to get to the finish line quicker, but then everyone has to like fix their mistakes. Like that guy in the next day, the guy has burnt risotto. He's got to make it again for himself because it's his service. So did that shortcut save anything? Not really. It caused more issues than it solved. So how do we avoid the shortcuts? I think first and foremost, it's just understanding, like asking yourself, is this a shortcut or is this just a creative solution to something? What am I trying to avoid? That's the real question. By doing it this way, what am I trying to avoid at a deeper level? If it's a temporary thing, you have to, no problem, go for it. Sometimes you use these little life hacks and all that, cool. But at a deeper level, what are you avoiding? Also come to the idea that, you've got to work for what you want in many ways. You have to commit to being the best you can be, not to just getting there first. And by doing that, this is the long cuts like they talked about. It's stepping into that. Also showing up. Achievement is not a goal, but a reward for your effort, right? Accomplishing and achieving, sure, those are cool, but who are you really? Who are you stepping into? This is integrity. This is a character. And lastly, experiment. What are different ways? I talk a lot about creativity on my social and stuff, and this is one of those things. Like, just get your hands dirty, play around, practice something. What's another way I can do this? And sometimes it's a shorter way, or sometimes it's a better way. Sometimes it's longer, whatever. Don't just use speed as the only metric, right? And so it's really about stretching yourself, about seeing how you can improve things, but not just in terms of speed, right? And sometimes the tried and true way is there because it's tried and true. Sometimes you don't have to fix it, but you can put your own spin on it, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with making life easier in some ways, but when you make that your personality, or you just rely solely on that, you're really shortcutting so much of the beauty and the lessons that this life offers. And so if you're in that position where you just want to keep shortcutting, just slow down. What is it you're avoiding? Because that's where the answer is, right? For these cooks, maybe they realize that they weren't strong cooks. And instead of facing that and maybe taking steps to improve, they thought maybe if I'm faster, I will be seen a certain way. I don't know. They're all three different, very different people. I don't know. The underlying could be just habit. But I know when I do these shortcuts over and over, I ask, what am I avoiding? And that will usually get me back on track, because it's growth can be painful and a lot of people want to avoid pain, but it is such a marvelous tool. Anyway, we shall end there. And one thing, please. Speaking of courage and plucking up the courage, I'm looking for some brave and beautiful souls to comment, like, share, subscribe, and leave reviews. Whether you watch this on YouTube or listen to on iTunes or Spotify or wherever else you listen to your hot and tasty shows like this, I would be ever so happy and grateful. And remember, like I said, if I get to 1,000 subs, I'm going to cook something for you. I have no idea what I'm going to make. I'll get to that. I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. I'll show you a few things. Maybe not the hollandaise, but maybe I'll show you proper hollandaise. I don't know. It's the 1,000 subscriber chef reveal. So make like an egg and get cracking. Kitchen's closed. Now scram.